Hey everybody, how we doing? How's the session going? Do we enjoy the morning sessions? I know I did. Awesome work happening in Utah. It's incredible to be here. It's incredible to see all of this. I was gassed up coming. I was talking to some of our local teams about how great Utah is doing in AI and all of the different individual organizations that are contributing to the effort here. So it's great to be here and actually see it. So I'm going to do a little bit of a brief background on myself. So my name is Levi McClenny. I did a PhD in electrical engineering at Texas A&M University. Primarily focused on physics-informed machine learning and where physics intersects with AI, neural networks. Talk a little bit about that in the talk. While I was in grad school, I had the opportunity to sit on the Texas A&M University System Board of Regents as a student, which was an incredible way to see how higher education and state entities come together to achieve outcomes such as these. Had a lot of awesome opportunities there too, got a lot of awesome invites to a lot of awesome events. And I joke with my wife all the time that I'm going to spend my entire professional career trying to claw my way back to that level of coolness. The year after that, I had the opportunity to sit on the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. So that was a state board where I worked closely with the Texas Higher Education Commissioner and had the opportunity to help create degree programs, validate universities that they were coming forward as institutions of higher education in the state. So it was great to see from the state side how institutions of higher education coming together to create degrees and subsequently be able to train the workforce in the state. So just a really awesome background there to be able to come and address a group like this. And so with that, I'll dive right on in. So I'm going to talk today about responsible AI in the physical era. And so as Benny mentioned, I spent some time at Booz Allen Hamilton. So after coming out of my PhD, I had the opportunity to go and, thank you, excellent. I have a military background as well, so I had a clearance from the Army, and I wanted to go and I wanted to impact, use that machine learning background to impact the broader good. So I took the opportunity to go and worked at Booz Allen, and had the worked there for about 3.5 years. Created a broad portfolio of analytics delivery, and then came to Cisco, where I started to run a team of AI engineers at the global level. That means I run a team of engineers that span all across the world, across all verticals, to see all sorts of different initiatives that are happening across enterprise, across Fortune 500 companies, across institutions of higher education, governments. So at Cisco, we have a really unique perspective on how AI is being adopted at large. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that today. So we're going to talk about where we've been, talk about where we're going. Then I want to talk about 3 tenets of trust for emerging AI, specifically around agentic and physical AI. And at the end, we're going to talk about some common gaps to trustworthy AI and how everybody in this room can come together, policymakers, academia, industry, students can all come together to close those gaps. So with that, let's talk about AI, where we've been and where we're going. So AI is not new. Most of the folks in this room that have been in this field for a while know that. Originally, back in the 40s and 50s, it was postulated that machines could achieve human level intelligence in some specific fields, dating back to things, the Turing machine, for instance, the Enigma machine, Alan Turing, the Turing test all the way back into the 50s and World War II. So as these different things came to light, right, AI started to gain more and more prominence, but it was still a bit of a niche field, right? Interestingly enough, the idea of it was postulated back in the 50s. Backpropagation, the main method by which it's trained, was postulated in the 70s. Geoffrey Hinton, one of the fathers of AI, didn't actually train a neural network until 1987. Decades passed before we could do something with AI. And now we're all sitting in this room talking about it. Changed. So what changed in the late 2000s, a guy by the name of Ian Buck at NVIDIA created CUDA. And NVIDIA's GPUs that were used primarily for graphics were now able to train neural networks. We're now able to do matrix multiplications, basic mathematical functions. So when that became true, we could do things like train neural networks. We could create backpropagation algorithms. So we could train AI in mass. So in the 2010s, perception AI. Yeah, appreciate the help. So that was when perception AI started to come out. And this chart, you'll see here, I got a laser pointer. In the 2010s, perception AI started to emerge. That is AI being able to perceive. AI can see the world around it. Stand back here. Okay. AI can perceive the world around it. Think computer vision. To make decisions, we can see what things are and what they're not, right? Natural language processing. This is a big thing that started to emerge into. Natural language processing started in 2017, the Attention Is All You Need paper came out. Then the idea of a transformer started. And then the idea of pre-training a transformer and using it to generate text gained a lot of prominence. That generative pre-trained transformer became ChatGPT, which is actually OpenAI's third iteration. It was the one that they put a nice front end on and everybody started to use. So that got us into the next generation, generative AI in 2022. Large language models started to gain a lot of prominence. So I'm gonna ask a question. In the late 2010s, let's say circa 2017, 2018, who had an AI app on their phone that was primarily built around AI or an AI application? Few people. I'd actually argue that most of you did because Apple released the feature where you could unlock your phone with your face. So it's computer vision, right? But outside of that, so now in this room, how many of you guys have something like ChatGPT or Perplexity or something like that and you use it? Almost everybody. That's the adoption curve that we're seeing. That's also the adoption curve that we're seeing with all of the Fortune 500 companies, with a lot of governments, institutions of higher education across the board. So what's next? There's a lot to be had in explainability and bias and fairness in LLMs. That is absolutely true. But we're going to talk about what's next, getting to some of the questions that we had earlier. Agentic AI and physical AI. So this chart, I mentioned it a second ago, was borrowed from Jensen Huang. The style of it is Cisco, but the content was borrowed from Jensen Huang when he spoke at GTC in March. He said he had these same four frontiers: perception, generative, agentic, and physical. Agentic AI is the era that we're entering into. What is the difference? Large language models are capable of digesting a lot of data. They're capable of doing a lot of analysis. Oftentimes, they don't make decisions. Agents make decisions. They take the context, they do the analysis, and they use that analysis to make a decision. Physical AI, you can see there, the examples: robotics, self-driving cars. They take AI and they make a decision that impacts the world around it, right? So things like self-driving cars or even planes that fly themselves or have a substantial amount of autonomy inside associated with a single pilot. So this is where the AI trend is going. Getting back to our question a little bit earlier, these are the types of things that from a responsibility and explainability perspective we need to be prepared for as we move forward. And that's where academia and industry can come in and help. So let's talk a little bit about the industry at large. So the first two numbers there, 1.57 trillion contribution to the global economy by AI by 2030. 300 billion in global spend on AI. That's a big number too. But what's more interesting, I think, especially for this group, are the two numbers on the right side of the slide. 75% of large enterprises will rely on AI-infused processes by 2026. That means that these organizations, they're adopting it. They're adopting it quickly. There's a strategic imperative that they're feeling. There's a pressure. They're taking the bad with the good. They don't have a choice. So it's groups like this that have to come together to be able to say, this is the way we have to implement AI for it to be safe and trustworthy and explainable. The number on the far right is even more staggering. 97% of global organizations reported an urgency to deploy AI-powered technologies. We don't need it. We need it now. That means, again, they're taking the bad with the good. So Cisco sees this across a lot of different industries. They're listed down on the bottom. We see it happening across the world, which is an interesting position to be in. So what sorts of things do we need to be looking at as we move into physical and agentic AI? And how do we make these things more trustworthy? Putting together three broad speaking tenets of trust. Number one, bounded autonomy. What does that mean? The system knows what to do and its limits. The middle one is supervised decisions. That means that humans have the ability to interact with, interface, and control what needs to be controlled. And the last one is transparent outcomes. That means that clear explainability of what steps an AI agent took to achieve the outcome that it got to. We need to have logs of all of those things. So in here is a couple of instances of how to do it, and metrics that we need to be able that we can show to demonstrate those standards and adherence to those standards. So for bounded autonomy, things like actions stay on an allow list. The agent stays in its declared condition. Unsafe conditions are blocked. Actions can't be permitted. Supervised decisions, we could talk about AI being able to pause quickly, maybe rewind. Humans need to review high impact steps. If there's a lot of uncertainty, a human needs to be able to touch it and change it. And critically, those changes can be undone. In the context of agents, that may be possible. In the context of physical AI, it may not. Once a car decides to make a left turn, it may not be able to undo that decision. By all accounts, it can't. And then lastly, transparent outcomes. How do we record that? Records of actions, logs, reproducibility scripts, because just because it was done once doesn't mean it was done again. How many have run an AI experiment once, seen a great outcome, run it again, and seen a totally different thing and go, oh man. I know as I was going through my graduate days, when I'm doing my PhD, I saw that time and time again. It's a very frustrating problem, right? Like, what changed? Nothing changed. The results changed. Why? The stochasticity of neural networks, which is a problem. And then last, you need to log a high uncertainty for human intervention. So with that, I'm going to talk about a brief case study. This is a framework called agency. Anybody in the room familiar with MCP, Model Context Protocol? Oh, good. Excellent. Okay, awesome. So Model Context Protocol is a protocol by which agents interface. Okay. And a large language model can say, hey, I need this type of information. With using MCP, it can go in and can find it. Okay. Above MCP, there is an additional layer, an additional open source framework that allows things like a directory, identities, policies, what types of messages exist within this model context protocol, additional observability premises. All of that comes together to create additional explainability when an agent interfaces with another agent. So when a human interfaces with a large language model and asks a question, you'll see the outputs of that, generally speaking. When an agent needs to go and do an action with another agent, humans by definition may or may not see it. So how do we make sure that that's done in a way that's transparent and explainable? This framework is a framework by which you can start to do those things, give you that level of explainability. So how does it abide by the 3 tenets we just talked about? Bounded autonomy. You have a trust registry. Attestation, when an agent goes and accesses something, it leaves a log. Capability and permissions per model. Policy enforcement points on messages. As far as supervised decisions concerned, you need to be able to pause and resume or revoke APIs that agents can use based on what they need and when they need it, what they're allowed to see. And verifiable outcomes, logs or tool calls, logs of tool calls and inter-agent messages. So inter-agent, as messages are sent between agents, those are logged. What's it talking to about it and why? How many of you guys have seen the fun video where like 2 AI chatbots are sat next to each other and they start to talk in some crazy wonky language that's not real? You guys see that? So it's a real video. There's actually probably multiple at this point. But there's videos floating around of 2 AI chatbots that are sitting there, they're chatting with each other, and eventually the conversation divulges into madness, which is amusing to watch, but a little freaky to think about, right? And lastly, verifiable outcomes. So log the tool calls. Who's talking to what and when? Traceable provenance with correlation IDs, replay support. All of these things are required when agents start to interface with each other. All of this is in a framework that exists today. As I mentioned, it's called agency. And I was asked to not do any marketing, but all I'll say is that agency was created and subsequently open sourced, which can be used for free by the organizations whose logo is in that corner. So let's talk about physical AI. Let's pivot a little bit. talked about agents, how they interface, and how we need to control that and explain it. Physical AI is very, very different. There's a lot that goes into trust with physical AI because it's actually touching matter, touching people's lives. Self-driving cars. Some of you have seen the video of the Tesla driving down the road and it runs the stop sign by the school bus and hits a fake kid that's pulled out. Anybody seen that? I just saw it again the other day on my newsfeed. Right? So they set this test up. There's a school bus that stopped that has its stop sign out, and they use a rope and they pull out a mannequin right as the car drives by. Most of the time, it doesn't see it. Very, very oftentimes, it doesn't react. And there's nothing in the programming that says it reacted. Scary stuff, right? So what changes? Actions affect people, equipment. We have to create an operating envelope. When can you do what, when, and where, and why? Failures must land to a safe state quickly. What is a safe state? We need to define what that safe state is. So if there's something that's interfacing with matter, in the event of a catastrophic failure of the code, what happens? What signals do we watch? Now we look at operating envelope signals, location, speed, geofences, environments, weather. We need to track all of these things in order to understand how an agent is making it, or how an physical AI algorithm is making its decision and why. Model confidence, health signals. You're going to have so many health sensors that run through, especially in manufacturing facilities and things like that, where a lot of these will be implemented, that when those signals go down, what happens? What decisions are being made? Getting back to our safe state thing. And then lastly, what kind of policy hooks do we enforce? So we create an envelope. If it's outside of the envelope, pause, stop, hand it off to a human. If some sort of uncertainty spikes based on whatever the algorithm is tracking, fail to a safe state, rate limit. And then physical constraints. So this is where things get really interesting. When you start to talk about physics, you have a lot more knowledge. One of the inherent flaws of AI and neural networks up to this point is that they require a boatload of data to train, right? We've all been talking about that today. One of the interesting aspects with physical AI is you have a lot of a priori information about the system. We know a lot about why planes fly. We understand Bernoulli's equation. We understand fluid dynamics. We understand all of that. So how do we incorporate that into an AI model? We don't need just a bunch of data we can use. So there are different metrics and different ways by which you can do this. And now is the part where I talk about my research, shamelessly. It's physics-informed neural networks. This is work that I did back at Texas A&M. Physics-informed neural networks are models trained with the equations of physics. So physics is built into the model, baked in. Trained with initial conditions, boundary conditions are built into the loss function. So whenever the neural network trains, it has to abide by them, or it's heavily penalized if it doesn't. So you see there in the bottom right of the slide, that's one of the charts from the journal paper that we published around it, where the neural network, it's maybe hard to see with some of the projector, but there's a blue line and a red line. The two are exactly on top of each other. One of them is a exact solution of a system of differential equations. The other is a neural network approximation of that. The two lines are right on top of each other. That may be why they're hard to see. The interesting aspect of that, and it trained that effectively with no data. The physics is the data. Enforcing the physics trains the model. On the bottom, you can see the bottom right chart is the residuals, which should be 0. You can see in most instances they are close to. On the left side is the error from the actual solution. Let's talk about that error. Those are places where you need to set thresholds for decision making. If the error isn't 0, or there's some delta between what it should be and what it is, or what you think it should be and what it is, that's where you need to set a threshold to make a decision by a human. So how does this abide by our standards? Bounded autonomy, right? We declare the physics explicitly. We set checks. The residual is less than the threshold. Good. It's trained to completion. Otherwise, we keep going. Penalize errors. That's actually the paper that this is pulled from was actually a more efficient training algorithm that was done by penalizing errors in the neural network as it was training. I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that, not on stage because it'll take the whole time. So supervised decisions, we show the limits in plain English. We define the physics in human readable formats. And then we keep a pause stop during training for fallbacks. We keep logs. We understand where things were going correctly. And then when they stopped, why, we go back and we roll back to that. And then for verifiable outcomes, just like this, and it's common practice in academia, obviously, to publish your error, to publish your results, attach error heat maps, package run manifests, publish your code, right? For those that are writing papers, and the graduate students that are writing papers, publish your code, goes a long way. And then maintain logs for reproducibility. And so with that, as we kind of move forward, we have these tenets we've talked about. How do we come together to achieve them? So what are the kind of common gaps that we would see to be able to implement some of these trustworthy AI initiatives? We have an evidence gap. This is one that's near and dear to academia's heart. You publish your results, you publish your approach with results. Or you don't just say it works. Nobody will believe you. Never pass peer review. Don't even try. Right? And so with that, we talked a little bit earlier about what kind of metrics or benchmarks are going to be required as we move forward into more explainable AI. So this is where there's an opportunity for academia and industry to come together and say, hey, these are the types of explainable benchmarks we need. We need to collect data against these. We need to publish that. And people need to start complying with them. When they publish papers, when they publish new models, these are the types of things we need to be able to demonstrate compliance with. Clear pass-fail bars, publishing results, not just approaches. The next gap is a portability cap. You've probably seen this. It works on this environment, but not that environment. Well, you may have a similar situation whenever you're moving models in a physical AI, in a physical world, right? When you're moving models through a refinery, a manufacturing facility. So your models need to be portable. So in doing so, we need to create shared scenarios and for reproducibility and reproducible results. Next is a governance gap, getting into some of the policy conversations we were having earlier. Make AI trust and metrics required for funding. We need to have explainability metrics associated with some of our funding. Reporting incident logging and not penalizing those that do. And then last, independent checks and public scorecards so that people can see where funding is being used and how explainable those things are. And then finally, a readiness gap. And this one is for sure one that I've heard a lot of conversation about today, and it's excited me a lot, is a place to practice. So learning labs and infrastructure, I actually published this slide before Margaret's talk earlier, but hearing her talk about learning labs and the opportunity for people to go in and tinker, learn, fail in a controlled environment, it's exactly what needs to happen. And so her comments about Utah being on the forefront of this, my team over the corner over there does a lot of work in higher education. Utah firmly is at the forefront of a lot of these initiatives that we're talking about right here, which is a great thing to see. And this is one of those places. And so with that, as we move into those same 4 areas, we talk about open benchmarks, we talk about shared scenarios, policy, living labs, and infrastructure. This is where everybody in the room can come together to achieve all these things. Research and educators can design methods, teach the metrics, publish the metrics. Industry, sitting in the room, create and adopt protocols, report metrics that are being created by academia. Policy and procurement, our policymakers and agencies create procurement requirements that have clear metrics of explainability associated with them and disclosure protections for those that for compliance. And then lastly, students and the workforce has the opportunity to manage, maintain, and work in living labs and infrastructure by which they can learn and grow. And so with that, my time here is wrong. I've got 4 minutes. So with that, I will take a question. I think maybe 2. Oh, thank you.
Hi, loved your talk. Really like the framing. What I see is it's a design framework practically of how you do this for both for the governance but the actual operations.
Absolutely.
The thing that concerns me is that, you know, the current AI models and agentic agents and everything weren't designed that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder your thoughts on whether you can really patch on a posteriori the kinds of things that you want to see for controls, or whether you really have to go back and design from the beginning to make sure that that's truly embedded. I mean, you talked about ground truth, basically the work that you did that you published on physics start from the beginning and say, here's what the model can do and what it can't do. But that really is like at the very beginning of the process, it seems to me. So I was just curious to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I think as you're building out an agent, you're defining what it can and can't do sort of from the outset, what it can interface with and what it cannot interface with. To your point about designing from the beginning, as we move through into a more modular deployment model for AI, which I think by and large, I can't remember, one of the panelist members was saying this earlier, AI is going to be moved into a more heavily modular state, interaction via APIs. APIs can be tracked, APIs can be logged. And as you're doing that, you have the opportunity to see who is interfacing, what agents are interfacing with what other agents and how. So the agent, when it's built, is given a certain charter, and it must stay within that charter by its programming. And then as you log its behavior, you have an additional layer of compliance to be able to validate that that is continuing to reign true. So I would say that making sure that we have APIs by which these things are interfacing is a check that you can add afterward, right? Put an agent behind an API and govern what it's doing there, right? That's a way to implement a trust gate. But and then obviously designing from the beginning would be the best way to do it. Hi.
Hey, Levi, thank you. Quick question. So I'm a AI consultant. I work with a lot of different higher ed and different industries. And one of the things that people get stuck on sometimes is, well, I mean, all of my current clients actually pay me, which is great. Some of the prospective clients are still figuring out how do we get the funding in order to do this AI thing. We can cross our fingers and ask for the money, but what are some of the levers that you've seen organizations use? It's not like they just, well, we'll just fire these people and then, put AI in place. It doesn't work. So what are some of the levers that you've seen?
Yeah, so actually I would say the latter lever you just mentioned is unfortunately one that's seen time and time again, at least, in a few different industries, right? Is pulling the people lever is unfortunately one that we've seen a lot. And that's one that we try to avoid by creating AI that is going to augment humans. And so when it comes to implementing AI and seeing how enterprise and a lot of our customers are implementing it, there's two sort of ways of leveraging AI. One is to create something that's going to impact your top line, which is going to be to drive more revenue, or something that's going to impact your bottom line. It's going to create some sort of efficiency and some sort of savings. So that is where the focus can be to free up budget to be able to expand into deeper AI initiatives, is say, let's focus on quick wins that we can implement to create some sort of efficiency to save money somewhere that we can then repurpose, right? So that's been a very common track that we've gone down, and being able to start small is a gift that you can either do with various different types of infrastructure, but you can start small, you can implement that first use case, save some money, and use that to kind of snowball into bigger and bigger initiatives.
Thank
Does
you.
that answer your question? All right,
Thank
great.
you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate the time. Thanks, everybody.